Hi, hello, welcome back to the channel. So today I have another fun off the books video for you, which is kind of off the books. I'm thinking of like basically the Tuesday videos that aren't like specifically reviews of books or like that sort of thing. So today I have Stephen King books that I want to read. So currently, I am reading through Stephen King's Holly Gibney series of books, and I'm really enjoying them. I'm just a few pages away from the end of watch, but I needed to record this, so I am stopped reading, started recording. But I do have a big long list of the books that I want to read, and I've also pulled out the blurbs for those books. So I figured we could go through the books. I can read the blurb and I can tell you why I'm interested in reading that book. Um, for a little bit of background, so I'm not going to talk in depth about the King books that I have read, but I've previously read the first 7 Dark Tower novels. I haven't read the one that he released after the finale because I kind of felt like that story was done and I didn't really want to go back to that world right away. But maybe one day I'll read that one. I have read the first 2 Bill Hodges books, and I'm almost done with the third. I'm going to be then reading The Outsider, and I'm going to then read the Holly story from If It Bleeds, and then Holly. Previous to that, I've also read Carrie, and I've read Fairy Tale, the new release from last year. So, let's dive into some Stephen King books and I'll tell you a little bit about them. So, one of my highest priorities on King books is a book called Lizzie's Story. And Lizzie's Story, I decided I wanted to read that one because King says it's his favourite novel he's written. Now, I don't know enough to know whether Stephen King is a great judge of his own work. But it'd be fun to find out, which is why I've picked Lizzie's Story. Lizzie's Story was released in 2006, and it was inspired by King going into hospital and coming back. And while he was in hospital, his wife decided to redecorate his office, and he came back to his office to find everything packed into boxes and thought, oh, this will be what it's like when I die. And so he decided to write a novel about a woman whose husband was a famous novelist who passed away and how she deals with that. So I'll read the description thingy here. The blurb. So this is the blurb on the back of the book that I've copied straight off of Jeff Bezos's Everything shop. So every marriage has 2 hearts, one light and one dark. Lizzie knew it when she first fell for Scott, and now he's dead, she knows it for sure. Lizzie was the light to Scott Landon's dark for 25 years. As his wife, only she saw the truth behind the public face of the famous author, that he was a haunted man whose best-selling novels were based on a terrifying reality. Now Scott has gone, Lizzie wants to lock herself away with her memories, but the fans have other ideas. And when the sinister threats begin, Lizzie realises that, just as Scott depended on her strength, her light, to live, so she will have to draw on his darkness to survive. So I think that's a pretty good pitch. It's very funny that King writes a lot of books about novelists, quite self-indulgent. But you know, when you're kind of considered to be one of the greatest novelists ever, currently, greatest living novelists of all time, I think it's kind of I don't know, maybe maybe it's less self-indulgent. Next up on my list, we have 11/22/63. So this one, I just love the concept. So if you aren't aware, 11/22/63 is the date that John F. Kennedy was assassinated, and this book is basically about a English teacher who finds a way to travel back in time. And so he decides that he's going to try and prevent the JFK assassination. There's a TV miniseries of it starring James Franco. I think that 11/22/63 is regarded as like his best or one of his best modern works. So that's one of the reasons why I've decided I want to read it. Again, just the concept. I love time travel books, and I really think that Stephen King can get this one right. Mostly because he was alive and remembers well the 60s, so he'll be able to sell the 60s in a way that a lot of modern authors might not be able to. Here is the blurb from the back of the book. What if you could go back in time and change the course of history? What if the watershed moment you could change was the JFK assassination? 11/22/63, the date that Kennedy was shot. Unless... King takes his protagonist, Jake Epping, a high school English teacher from Lisbon Falls, Maine, 2011, on a fascinating journey back to 1958, from a world of mobile phones and iPods to a new world of Elvis and JFK, of Plymouth Fury cars and Linda Hopping, of a troubled loner named Lee Harvey Oswald, and a beautiful high school librarian named Sadie Dunhill, who becomes the love of Jake's life, a life that transgresses all the normal rules of time. With extraordinary imaginative power, King weaved the social, political, and popular culture of his baby boom generation into a devastating exercise in escalating suspense. Don't know about you, but that blurb would sell me on it, even if I didn't already want to read it. I think it's well written. It's obviously Stephen King. Next up, we have one that I think is not particularly well regarded, which is a book called The Institute. Institute was published in 2019. And one of the main reasons that I want to read The Institute is because I own it. So I was given a copy of The Institute by somebody who knew that I enjoyed the Dark Tower books, and so was like, oh, you like Stephen King, here's his new book. I think I read like 100 or 200 pages. Like I got quite far into the book, and then got distracted by a new release game or something like that, and put it down, and then I've kind of never gone back to it. But I would really like to, because I don't like to donate gifted books without reading them, and someone put some thought into buying me that book, so I want to read it. That is not the most exciting reason on this list. Probably the least exciting reason on this list, which is why I didn't save it for last or anything like that. So, here's the blurb on the back of the book. In fact, I can read it from the book. I don't have to read it from my notes. There's only one way out. Luke Ellis, a super smart 12-year-old with an exceptional gift, is the latest in a long line of kids abducted and taken to a secret government facility hidden deep in the forest in Maine. Here, kids with special talents, telekinesis and telepathy, like Luke's new friend Kalisha, Nick and Iris, are subjected to a series of experiments. There seems to be no hope of escape until Luke teams up with an even younger boy whose powers of telepathy are off the scale. Meanwhile, far away in a small town in South Carolina, former cop Tim Jameson, looking for the quiet life, has taken a job working for the local sheriff. What he doesn't know is he's about to take on the biggest case of his career. So, that sounds fun. I remember seeing the book advertised and the blurb and stuff and thinking, ooh, I wonder if this is connected to Dark Tower in any way. So I'm really interested to find out whether it is, and I guess I'll tell you guys when I get around to reading it. So here's an obvious one. This is the book that is considered by many to be King's greatest work, and is also deeply connected with the Dark Tower, another reason why I want to read it, and it is The Stand, his post-apocalyptic novel from 1978. So The Stand, as I said, is considered by many to be King's greatest work, much to his chagrin. I think I read a quote that said something to the effect of, when your biggest fans think your best work was 20 years ago, it can be a bit disheartening. But I have tried to read The Stand in the past, and this was when I was not so into reading as I am now. Obviously didn't have a booktube channel because I've just started it earlier this year, and I fell off the book, although I think I got quite far again there. I think I probably got 200 or 300 pages in, but I would really like to give that one another try. With all of the books by King that I have read a bit of, My plan is probably not to read them for a while, to try and use newer books to push them out of my head a little so I don't remember them, because I don't really enjoy rereading. So I guess we'll see. But The Stand is something that so many people say is so good that I want to read it. And I know that I enjoyed what I read. So here's the blurb from The Stand if for some reason you live under a rock and you have never read it. First come the days of the virus, then comes the dreams. Dark dreams that warn of the dark man, the apostate of death, his worn-down boot heels tramping the night roads, the warlord of the charnel house and prince of evil. His time is at hand, his empire grows in the west, and the apocalypse looms. When a man crashes his car into a petrol station, he brings with him the foul corpses of his wife and daughter. He dies, and it doesn't take long for the virus which killed him to spread across America and the world. Now, weirdly, I did consider reading this book during COVID. Probably the worst time to be reading The Stand. But now that times are a lot easier on the pandemic front, I think it's not even a pandemic anymore. I think it's not even an epidemic. Now that, life is a lot easier on that front, and the sort of Damocles is no longer hovering over myself and my family, I think it's something that I would really like to read. And I think I've already gone over it multiple times, but yeah, I've been really interested in reading The Stand. Next up is a book called Pet Sematary, released in 1983. Now, why do I want to read Pet Sematary? Because King apparently deemed Pet Sematary too hardcore, or too emotionally disturbing to publish, and only pulled it out of his back catalogue of previously written novels because he had to fulfill a contract to his publisher and didn't have anything new to supply. But it's also been the subject of multiple movie adaptations, and many people say Pet Sematary is excellent. I am mildly worried because I don't really do well with animal cruelty, death, etc. I've got 2 cats. You've seen both of them, or at least one of them, in the videos, and there's just a kind of, I don't know, there's like a part of me in the back of my brain that's like, oh, but this would be awful if it happened to the cats. And probably many people can empathise with this. And if you've read Pet Sematary and you know what the disturbing stuff is in it, please do tell me whether you think that I would or wouldn't be able to read it. The example I could give with my kind of weirdness around animal cruelty is that I watched Guardians of the Galaxy 3, and I felt that a lot of the animal stuff in that was a little bit too much, just a little, very tolerable, but to the point where I did not want to really go see that film again, or I'm not really interested in rewatching it. So that's kind of where I'm standing on that front. I'll read the blurb for you. I don't know, I've talked a lot about why I do and don't want to read this one, so this is kind of an odd one out. But, so, the house looked right, felt right to Dr. Lewis Creed. Rambling, old, unsmart and comfortable. A place where his family could settle. The children grow and play and explore. The rolling hills and meadows of Maine seemed a world away from the fume-choked dangers of Chicago. Only the occasional big truck out on the 2-lane highway, grinding up through the gears, hammering down the long gradients, growled out an intrusive threat. But behind the house and far away from the road, that was safe. Just a carefully cleared path up into the woods where generations of local children have processed with the solemn innocence of the young, taking with them their dear departed pets for burial. A sad place maybe, but safe. Surely a safe place, not a place to seep into your dreams, to wake you sweating with fear and foreboding. So, interestingly, I really have no idea what this book is about, apart from, I guess it's about a place where pets are buried. So I'm interested to find out what's going on with it and learn a bit more about the story. So the next one is another recent King novel. One that I don't think is particularly well liked in the same way that The Institute is kind of often thought of as one of his middle of the road books. And this one purely, I was interested in reading it because the blurb on the back of the book, I saw this book in a bookshop and was like, oh, that sounds really interesting. This one is Billy Summers from 2021. So, Billy Summers is a killer for hire. He's among the best snipers in the world, a decorated Iraq war vet who can blend into any neighbourhood and disappear after the shot is taken. But he'll only agree to a contract if the target is a truly bad guy. Now, Billy wants out, but he's offered one final job, an offer which is just too big to refuse. As the days count down to the hit, Billy senses something is wrong. He doesn't yet know just how wrong, or about the woman who will help him try to set things right. Part thriller, part war story, part lyrical portrait of small town America, Billy Summers is about a good man in a bad job with one last shot at redemption. That sounds really interesting. I really like Stephen King's non-horror, non-supernatural novels. For example, I really enjoyed Mr. Mercedes. I think that's the best of his that I've read of the Holly Gibney books. I've only read 2 and 90%, but that's the best of those 3 so far. So Billy Summers, the kind of the sniper assassin stuff sounds really interesting. It's not the sort of story that I would normally gravitate to, so I kind of earmarked that one in my mind and was like, oh, I'm definitely going to try and read that. So that's another one that's going on my Stephen King to read list. Finally, this is the last book that I singled out. I don't actually know how many I singled out here, but I'm sure I'll put it in the title. So this one is another of his earlier novels. It is The Dead Zone from 1979. So The Dead Zone is the introduction of Castle Rock, a famous setting in Stephen King's books. So that's kind of one of the first reasons that caught my mind to read it. But the other one is that the book is about a man who can see the future. And like I said, I enjoy time travel stories. And I feel like being able to see the future is kind of similar in terms of like what can happen and the story beats that might come up. So I enjoy the kind of see the future stories. So here's the description. The description of the blurb. The 2 things that conjured up that horrible night were his run of luck at the Wheel of Fortune and the mask. Meet Johnny Smith, a young man whose streak of luck ends dramatically in a major car crash, followed by blackness, a long, long time in cold limbo. When he wakes up, his life has been turned upside down. His fiancée has met someone else, and Johnny is cursed with the power to perceive evil in men's souls. He's had these hunches since he had an ice skating accident as a child. Now he has an ability to see into the future, an ability which will bring him into a terrifying confrontation with a charismatic, power-hungry, and dangerous man. So that blurb really drew me in. I basically went through today and read through a bunch of blurbs for Stephen King novels, and that was one of the ones that stood out to me. Also, the fact that, again, it's the introduction of Castle Rock, so if I want to read Castle Rock books, it's good for me to have read The Dead Zone first. Also, I do really enjoy reading King's books that are set in the past, in the 70s and 80s, because I really enjoy seeing his kind of his perspective as someone who's kind of writing back then, or I just like that kind of window into like 70s and 80s Americana, small town America. Something that obviously I could never experience personally because I was only born in the mid 80s. But definitely something that has kind of intrigued me. There's not as much stuff about kind of 70s and 80s America, unless, obviously media from the time, which I could go and watch and read and stuff, but not in many ways, not always as accessible as Stephen King. So after that weird rambling about 1970s books and 80s books, what I want to know is which of these books are the best, which are the ones that are the most worth my time. So I'm going to prioritize these books based on comments that I get from you guys, the viewers, and I might start adding them to future TBR plans. if you have read any of these books and you don't think they're worth my time, unless it's The Institute or Billy Summers, which apparently are not very good, but I want to read anyway, then please do let me know. Let me know. Tell me whether I should be too afraid of Pet Sematary to read it, and let me know if there's any adaptations of these books that I'd like to read. I purposefully didn't put It on the list, and I didn't put The Shining on the list, mostly because I feel like they're so big, especially It is so big in booktube, that's probably something that I want to tackle, and kind of do a should I read video, then read it if people say I'll like it, and then maybe come back and do like a was it worth my time sort of thing. So yeah, it is kind of its own thing for me because it's such a big chunky novel, but also I'm not 100% certain that I'm that in for the horror of it, because I'm not a big horror fan. Although I have really enjoyed End of Watch, which is kind of creeping into that horror and kind of horrifying story elements, supernatural story elements. So after, again, a long ramble, please leave a comment and let me know about any of these books. Tell me about books that I have missed off that I definitely need to read. And please do like the video if you liked it. Leave a comment if you didn't and tell me why. Subscribe to the channel to see these Stephen King content as it's coming out. This month is going to be mostly Stephen King books, but I'm going to try and, I think, vary up my reading for over the coming months rather than doing these theme months, simply because I don't want someone to be like, oh, is all this guy does Stephen King? And yes, I know I'm doing a Stephen King video between Stephen King videos, but let's not worry about that. I don't want someone to go, is all this guy does Stephen King? I don't want to just watch the Stephen King channel. So I do, if you're watching this, also cover sci-fi, fantasy, thrillers, crime, all kinds of genres, although my primary and favourite genre really is fantasy and epic fantasy. So stay tuned for more coverage and content from those genres. Next month, I think I'm going to try and read some sci-fi stuff. And I will speak to you guys in the next one, I guess. Bye.